to a live stream from Ramsey State Park. Today, I'll be talking to you. My name's Sky, and I am joined by our close friend Polly back here. I'm going to give a few minutes for some people to tune in, and then we'll go ahead and get started in our program. So just hold tight for a minute and we'll get going. While we wait for a few more people to tune in, I'll go ahead and just give some updates about the park and how recreation is taking place right now under our current COVID-19 restrictions. So if you want to come down to the park, you can do that now. The parking lot is open. Trails are open. There are some restrictions in place at the park. One of those is beach access is restricted between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. With the exception of accessing the water for water sports. The other restrictions we have still in place are closures of all of our buildings, so that's access to our historic buildings as well as our interpretive center and park store. And if you do choose to visit the park, please do so responsibly, and that goes by abiding by all of our current best practices, including wearing a mask when you're around other people, and bringing hand sanitizer, and not traveling groups that are large sizes, as well as making sure that you keep 6-foot distancing between you and all other visitors. The last thing I want to say about access to the park is access is currently for people for active sports, so picnicking, parties, things like that are not currently permitted. We're keeping the park open for people to keep moving and enjoy recreation in as safe of a way as we can, so we ask everyone else to do the same thing and to help us keep this park open to the public. Right. And the final thing I want to do before I close with Polly is just give a landing off to the Waswas speaking UP people who are the original stewards of this land, who have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and to also make acknowledgement for the fact that they remain involved in our efforts to take care of and steward our natural landscapes and cultural resources today. So if you'd like to learn about more of those contemporary efforts that are being made, I encourage you to check out the Amamutsun Tribal Band, and you can check out their website online. I highly recommend that. So let's dive right in, and I want to start this by announcing kind of a beginning of a series of videos we'll be doing, and just taking this opportunity to get you all a chance to meet and get to know a little better our farm animal programs here at the ranch. So, wind in the mic, thank you for that. Let me try louder here. I will just speak as loud as I can, and I apologize as we are outside. There's a bit of wind right now, so it might be hard to hear me. But hopefully you can hear me well enough, and I don't think you'll miss too much of what Polly has to say. So here we've got Polly. Polly is a Nubian goat who's on the move right now. So let me just get the camera stabilized as we go close to Polly, down to her level a little bit. All right. Okay, and I'll get down on her level too. So, Polly is a Nubian goat, and we've got quite the herd here at Wilder Ranch. We've got goats, we've got sheep, cows, and we also have a chicken coop. Now, the cows are housed separately, and so are the chickens, but the sheep and the goats, they all live in a pen together, and they're definitely a herd, and both sheep and goats are herd animals. And so they each have their kind of own unique personality and relationship within the herd, and they don't like being taken away from their herd very much. So right now Polly's nice and distracted because she's found all this fresh grass here to munch on. But I do want to try and keep today's video brief, because if you start hearing some screams from the barn behind me, that's probably one of Polly's friends wondering where she is. They are very community-minded animals, and it does make an impact when we take one out. The reason I've got Polly out here today with me is we do not get Wi-Fi in the animal enclosure, and so I wouldn't be able to be streaming to you live. So, talk a little bit about Polly. First off, why do we have goats here? And we are at a dairy ranch, so the focus of Wilder Ranch in its historic dairying period was on cattle and dairying cattle specifically. But they were also just a self-sustaining ranch in many ways, and so they did have goats and sheep and chickens on the ranch, and those could be used for, they would be milking their goats. They also, goat meat would be another source, reason you would have goats around. And maybe a bit of landscape management, as we can see Polly's doing here really well. Now, personally, I'd always been under the impression that goats can kind of just eat anything. Now, I've learned at this job that that's not entirely true. And even though we see Polly here chomping down pretty quick onto all these goodies here, this grass, that's not all they eat. So when we think about goats, it's important to distinguish them between, they're actually not grazers, but rather foragers. So when you think about a goat more in its natural landscape, they would be kind of in those more mountainous terrains, and as opposed to open fields. So they're foragers in that they will kind of pick and choose what they want to eat. So even though Polly here seems more than capable of taking down a hefty amount of grass, that's not all they eat, and they can't just eat anything. So we do have to be pretty careful with their diet, and it's part of the reason we ask all visitors who are at the park to refrain from feeding the animals, as that can upset their diet. And they have very sensitive lips that allow them to detect basically what's clean and good for them to eat and what isn't. Now, goats are one of the oldest. Polly almost wanted to take out the camera there. We have one of the oldest relationships with goats of any of the animals we've domesticated in the human history, going back about 10,000 years, so quite a while. And there's some interesting things about goats and how they've evolved with us. First off, you can see they're good climbers. That might be more of a natural adaptation. And you can already see Polly's getting a little bit antsy here. So just do a couple other things I wanted to talk to you about. If we get a little look at, I'm hoping we get a little look at her eyes, you can actually see they are, her pupils are rectangular. Now, there's a good reason for that. There you are, Polly. And the reason being that it allows them to have a wider spectrum they can see. So whereas the human eye can see, depending on person to person, maybe about 180 degrees, a goat is capable of seeing about 340 degrees. So almost a complete circle, meaning that when Polly's munching on that food right there right now, she's not gonna be able to, she's gonna be able to actually see pretty much what's almost directly behind her without turning her head. And with an animal that is foraging and also worrying about predators, that's gonna be a very important adaptation that they have. A couple more things just to note about Polly and goats. They talked a little bit about how they're foragers, and right now Polly's foraging on some grass. And if you've ever experienced, maybe your dog goes outside or cat and eats some grass off the lawn, that tends to result in them regurgitating whatever they ate. Now, humans would have a similar response, but goats seem to be able to munch down just fine on it, and it doesn't upset their stomachs too much. And that's largely in part to the difference in the physiology of how they're structured. So whereas a normal human will have one stomach, goats are ruminants, and they have 4 stomachs. So they have an entirely different process of digesting food. That's 4 stages. And in that first rumen stage, they are very much processing down the grasses that would be difficult for other mammals to eat. So we're going to be talking more about the other animals at the ranch and ways that they contributed to the dairy and the Wilders' livelihood. Today we got to meet Polly, who, as I said, is part of our very close-knit community of wilder animals. And I will tell you, Polly is not the head of the pack. While she is very sweet, we'll be meeting some of the other animals that I was hoping to introduce you to Jessie today, who's the leader of the pack. But sometimes you have to just take the goat that will be willing to go with you. So I'm glad you got to meet Polly today. We also will get a chance to meet our newest kid on the block, and that's Clara. But until then, please tune back in next week, get a chance to meet another one of our Wilder Farm animals. And if you'd like to check back in at 3 o'clock today, we'll be doing another live stream talking just a little bit about the history of the creamery and why we now have a dairy ranch without a creamery. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to see you on another Wilder live stream.